Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Confident Hypnotherapist. I'm Lawrence Akers. This episode, I'm so thrilled to be joined by Wendie Webber, who is the head of the Tribe of Healers and also has written the most incredible book called The Devil's Therapy. Wendie, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Lawrence.
Now, I did want to start off by talking about your book. Usually when I do these podcasts, if someone has a book or a product, I usually leave that to very last. But I really wanted to start with your book this time because I have to say, and I have to be careful how I phrase this because I want the intention to be done right. I was expecting it to be good, but it really exceeded every expectation in that regard. So I think what you have managed to create is not just an interesting read, but a beautiful read as well. I think your use of storytelling and metaphor just really enriches the process. And what I found interesting was as I was reading it, and I must admit I've still got a little bit left to go, but as I was reading it, I could feel my own shift happen from the stories I was reading and from the information that was there. And I thought that was really fascinating and valuable. So, firstly, thank you for writing such a beautifully written book. Um, your tagline in this, and it obviously refers to the story of the devil at the start, is discover how a 200-year-old fairy tale reveals a three-phase, seven-step system for facilitating effective regression to cause hypnosis. How did you come up with this concept? Look across this story and go, yeah, this ties in perfectly, which it does with this.
Well, um, I'm a dream worker. And so I've been interpreting dreams for probably 35 years or so. Um, and that's really, an area of passion for me, and it's fun. And I actually, I'm going to write a book on that too. But one of the things that I really enjoy doing is taking stories and deciphering them, interpreting them. And The Devil's Grammy Brother was a story that I heard. I think Robert Bly actually told this story in one of his recordings back in the 90s. And it was kind of like an earworm. And I have been working on that story ever since. So basically what I did was I took the story and I don't know, at some point, I think, like, I didn't start doing hypnosis until 1999. I signed up for the training and started learning about it, and then took the training in 2000. And it really wasn't until probably, I don't know, the early 2000s that suddenly something clicked for me. I made this connection, and it was like, oh, that story is all about regression. And so then I started chewing on it, but it wasn't until 2010 that I actually wrote the first draft.
It's interesting because even just reading that story, I was reading it at the time and thinking, where is this going? What is this? And then it's beautiful how each part of it you just unweave for us. And, it's that light bulb moment of, oh, yeah, I could see that now. I get that now. So it was just truly wonderful. You created Tribe of Healers, which by the name is a great name. What was your own journey that led you to become a healer?
Well, I'd have to do a rewind back into the early 80s. I was going through a divorce and looking for, answers to questions and solutions to problems. And this set me on to a spiritual path. And so I started reading everything I could get my hands onto. And within a few years, I decided, out of necessity more than anything, to open up a bookstore. because I had to make pilgrimages out of town to get the kind of books that I wanted to read. Nobody carried that stuff here. You know, it's not like I live in a little village somewhere on the edge of the woods, but the bookstores just, you know, if you went in there and looked for anything spiritual, all they had was this little shelf over in the corner, and it had a couple of occult books or something, and that was about it. And so I would go out of town and I would fill up the trunk of my car with books and come home and devour them. And then, you know, a month later, I'd be back doing the same thing. And I one day I said to my husband, you know, somebody should open up a metaphysical bookstore in Nanaimo. And he said, somebody? And so I did. I sold my house and took the equity that I had in my house and I put it into a bookstore, and I did that for 8 years. And that was really the beginning of a tribe of healers, because what I ended up with was a community of healers. And this was, you know, a community of people who were Reiki practitioners and massage therapists, psychotherapists, you know, addiction counselors, you name it. Anybody who was working in the field of healing would come to the bookstore. And so this introduced me to a lot of different modalities. It's also where I got into dreams.
Right. Well, tell me a little bit about your journey with hypnotherapy then. How did you come to learn hypnotherapy? I know you cover that in your book. I might add for people that are interested.
Yeah.
But what was your own learning journey with hypnotherapy there?
You know, it's really funny because I was never interested in hypnosis. I still aren't. I'm not very much interested in hypnosis. For me, it's what you can do with hypnosis.
Yeah.
That's what I'm interested in. And that you probably got that from reading my book. I'm not really into the hypnosis. However, it's a powerful way to access the part of the mind that has the power to create change. And that is very exciting to me. So I was reading a book called The Healing Power of Illness. The author's name is Detlefsen, and it was written, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago. It's in 25 different languages. And I already mentioned that I was filling up the trunk of my car with books. And so I don't read books more than once. I go through it, I highlight, I mess it up, and then I'm on to the next one, the next project. But this one, I was on my 5th reading.
Wow.
And there was just something in it that, I don't know, it just kept calling me back. And I go, there's something about, I just wasn't getting it. And then one day it was like, this ray of sunshine came through the skylight in my dining room, and it struck me on the forehead, and I went, oh my gosh. And it dawned on me that all the research that had been done in this book was based on regression sessions. And in that moment, I thought, wait a minute, regression? Isn't that hypnosis? And that was it. Within about 6 weeks, I was signed up for my first certification. And so it became a very long journey.
Exactly. Were there any particular, because I remember reading a book that you had done some work with Gerald Klein. Was it Gerald Klein that you'd done some work with?
Oh, Gerald Klein, yes.
Yeah, Gerald Klein,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to step up his name for
Omni.
crying out loud. Yes, Omni. When you look back on your training, was there any particular trainers or any particular courses that you did that you felt provided you with a greater insight than what you'd had previously?
I think my first certification did not prepare me for the realities of working with real clients. And so that kind of put me at a crossroads, and I had to decide, is this something I really want to invest in? And of course I was already in for about $3,000. So I figured, well, what the hell, I might as well just give another kick at it, because the first course never taught me anything about regression. And that's what I was interested in. And so it just so happened that a group of students got together one evening, and somebody had a video of some guy who was doing a demonstration. It was some hypnotist, and they put it was a VHS, and they put it into the machine, and they turned the thing on, and it was Gerald Klein. And of course, I was new to the whole field, so I didn't know who this guy was. But this was actually the first time I'd ever seen an actual hypnotherapy session. And the moment I saw that, I went, that's what I want to be able to do. That's the guy. So I tracked him down, and I because he was doing trainings in Florida, I did the distance training because I was already certified. So I did the distance training, but I took it very seriously, and I studied those videos and I practiced those techniques on real clients for 9 months. And it was modeling. I mean, I walked like Jerry, I talked like Jerry, I used Jerry's language, the whole thing. But that's what gave me the foundation. So because Jerry really is the guy that took Dave Ellman's approach and turned it into a curriculum that could be taught to just about anyone. Dave Ellman only taught medical practitioners. So Jerry is the guy that really turned it into a beautiful curriculum. So that gave me a solid foundation. I'd have to say that 5-Path was that was a real breaking point for me.
Carl Banyan.
Yeah, because Cal had added more of the psychological elements into the practice, more of the therapeutic applications, and he chunked it down into specific phase. I had a conversation with somebody about this today, and she said, what are your thoughts on that about 5-Path? And I said, I think it's an excellent learning module, because what it does is it takes a lot of the overwhelm of having to do too many things at once and just chunks it down. Just focus on this and get really good at that, and then go to the next thing and focus on that and get really good. Once you've kind of mastered all of those phases, then you can toss all the balls up in the air and adapt in your sessions.
Absolutely.
So that one was very pivotal for me. I actually wrote a manual for 5-Path.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. I was very dedicated. I practiced just 5-Path for 2 years. Really, I was like up to here in it. And I taught 7th-Path classes. And so I really was immersed in it for a while. I'm a good student. Another thing that I found really a great experience was alchemical hypnotherapy. It was more of a spiritual approach and lots of emphasis on healing the inner child and subpersonality work, which was something that I love because my approach to dream working is working with parts. So I'd have to say those were the three real sort of strong influences for me.
Now, the interesting thing with regression as well, and you've probably experienced this over time, is that there seems to be some hypnotherapists who are quite against regression for whatever reasons.
Sure.
And I'd really love to create the opportunity here for that rebuttal to take place. What is it about regression that you feel is so effective? And what kind of results have you seen from working with people with regression?
Well, okay, so you're right. There are a lot of practitioners who say, "Oh, you don't need regression, or it's antiquated, or you're re-traumatizing the client," or there's lots of arguments against it. And I guess my main response to that would be, well, okay. Oh, false memories is another one. I get that. And that's true if you don't know what you're doing. That's true. However, regression is not for every client. Regression is for emotional issues. Emotional issues are based in experiences from the past. Feelings don't just come out of nowhere. Something happened to cause that feeling in the first place. The argument about re-traumatizing, well, the client is re-traumatizing him or herself, because every time something happens in their daily life to trigger them, it triggers that memory.
It triggers that memory again.
And consciously or unconsciously, they regress, relive that event, and all the emotions and thoughts and all the rest of that stuff that's still trapped in that event are relived and reinforced, either, as I say, consciously or unconsciously. That's what a panic attack is. A panic attack is a spontaneous regression. Person just doesn't realize it. Post-traumatic stress disorder, when you put a D on it, that's where a person is blending this reality with a regressed state. They can't tell the difference, and they incorporate things out of this reality into what a psychologist would call a hallucination, but they're actually remembering something and they're reliving it at the same moment. So the re-traumatization is actually a byproduct of an unhealed event in the past. Why would you not go take care of that? Another element is that regression to cause is focused on locating the initial sensitizing event. That's the first time you ever felt that feeling. It could be the first time you ever felt that sadness, or the first time you ever felt that fear. But we want to get to the first time because it's the weakest link in the chain. Events that occur after or subsequent sensitizing events have the effect of reinforcing the pattern that's trapped in the ISE. So what happens is over time, it builds up pressure and eventually it comes to the surface in the form of symptoms. So if we can get back to the ISE and address it in that initial event, that's the event that has the weakest or the lowest emotional charge around it.
That's
so
right.
It's the least distressing for the client.
Yeah, that all makes absolute sense. And I think it's interesting because I've never understood why people or why other therapists may feel the need to tear down other approaches or other ways in working with people. For me, it's about having a rich toolbox of possible ways to work with people to best get a result for them.
I agree. Everything works. Everything works, but not everything works for everyone.
Yeah.
And not everything works all the time. It's a problem when you only have one modality. You need to have lots of things. And regression to cause hypnosis isn't one thing. It's a big toolbox of it's like a tool suite of techniques that all work together. So we use things like rapid inductions. Rapid inductions, it's not for stage hypnosis or whatever. We use them because they're time savers in a therapeutic setting. You don't want to waste a lot of time on the hypnosis because it's the least important part of the session. So a long, slow, drawn out relaxation induction just it isn't really efficient. That might be great for someone who's palliative or someone who wants to learn how to relax physically and mentally. That's a whole another thing. Self-hypnosis, you want to use relaxation hypnosis, but it isn't efficient in a therapeutic practice like regression hypnosis. So we use rapid inductions, we use bridging techniques, we use, there's all kinds of techniques that go into the inner child work. We use, if there's, an element of terror, for example, we would use a dissociation technique. The primary thing for me is to keep the environment that you're doing the healing work in, which is a client's subconscious mind, safe, to make it safe for the client to go where you need him to go and do what you need him to do. And the reason that I emphasize safety is because that is the subconscious mind's prime directive. And if we don't work with that, it's going to say, nah, not working with you. That's it.
Absolutely.
And it's game over. Yeah.
I was about to say, I think we've all had experiences of having that client that's really persistent about, nope, my unconscious is not, or my subconscious is not going to come and play here. And it's like, okay, well, let's just take a step back for a moment. What do you think, in terms of a hypnotherapy session, what do you think are the ingredients that creates a successful hypnotherapy session? I know that's a vague, large question in itself.
One thing, the therapeutic relationship.
Yeah.
You establish an alliance. And you need to have an alliance, not just with the conscious mind of the client, but with the subconscious mind. And that's why I don't do 10-minute preliminary interviews before diving into the hypnosis. It takes time to get the subconscious mind to step forward and to agree to work with you. That's the trick. The conscious mind is saying, yeah, I just want to make it gone. Right? Make the problem gone. And my answer to that is, I don't know how. It's your mind. Right? So what I want to see happening during the preliminary intake is I want to start evoking an emotional response from the client. I want to start seeing some emotions coming up to the surface because that's the subconscious mind stepping forward.
And it's wonderful in the book that you do also explore what kind of questions you ask as well to help get that happening. You know, what do you find question-wise is the most pertinent questions that really help to bring those emotions to the surface?
Um, well, it really depends on what the client's issue is, of course. But what I want to get to is, why is this a problem for you?
Yeah.
And how much of a problem is this for you? And what sort of a situation would make it worse for you? Because as soon as this client is talking about those things, they're actually mentally stepping into those events, and that's gonna give me a gateway into that emotional response. That's what I'm
Mm.
looking for. I want to see that discomfort starting to come to the surface, and at the same time, I'm making it safe for the client to be upfront and honest with me about what it is that they're dealing with.
Mm. I always tend to ask this question because I'm curious as to what people say. But if you could take, and it's ironically, it's a regression-based question. If you were to allow yourself to go back now to when you were first starting to learn hypnotherapy, what advice would the Wendie now give that Wendie then in terms of becoming that successful, confident hypnotherapist?
Um, well, I can only go on the things that I actually have done, but it would have been nice to shorten the learning curve a little bit. So the first thing that I would have done was gone just directly to Omni had I known about it.
Mm.
Because really it did give me the foundation that I needed for the work that I'm doing now. The other thing I would have done a lot sooner was to take a basic counseling course.
Mm.
You know, one of the things that I was taught pretty early on, it was, don't talk to the conscious mind. The conscious mind doesn't know anything. Just get him into hypnosis and go to work. And that, yes, that's true. The conscious mind
Yeah.
doesn't know. But if you don't spend time speaking with the conscious mind, the subconscious mind's over there, you know, on the sidelines there, watching you and
Mm.
deciding whether or not you can be trusted. And you know, honestly, I have been bulldozed in hypnosis. You probably have been too, and that is no way to do it, to run a therapeutic session. So I took a basic counseling course, and I'm talking really basic too. We're talking about just active listening skills and reflective listening skills, and
Mhm.
you know, asking things like clarification questions and things, and pacing, you know, the client. Those sorts of things can really help you to develop rapport with the subconscious level of mind, because you're getting the conscious mind on board.
I think that they're really valuable suggestions as well. There's so many great courses out there as well that people can do around counseling online nowadays. And I think it really helps to enrich, particularly that therapeutic relationship that you were talking about before, that sense of trust and rapport and congruence that's needed
Yeah,
to be able to really feel like you're working together
yeah.
towards an outcome. The flip side of my question from before, going into the future, what's next for Wendie?
Well, I have about 6 books to write.
Bit of a bucket list happening there.
If you had told me that I was ambitious, I would have said, I don't think so. But I really want to write these books. I've got them on the back burner. Um, Many of them relate to the book, The Devil's Therapy. So this is the why book. I want to write the supportive books that go with this.
Mm,
Because different trainers teach different approaches, and
mhm.
I just want to take what I've already put together that's congruent with this particular approach and make it available to more people. But the one that I really would like to get to, I've been wanting to do this since like 2010, around the same time I wrote the first draft. I have a course, and there's a book in it, or 2 books, in a program I call Dream Healing. And there's 2 levels of it. One is just learning how to do dream working with your own dreams. But the other level is for hypnotherapists, and how regression hypnosis is dream healing.
Mhm.
That when you're working with a memory, you're not working with an actual event. That's not the truth of what happened. It's just a composite of impressions and emotions and interpretations. And that's essentially what a dream is. It's all this data is being pulled together by your subconscious mind and presented in a particular way, and it holds meaning. And so learning how to tease out that meaning that's hidden in that symbolic language. That's essentially what I did with the Devil's Grammy Brother. I just dream worked the story. And so using the same techniques that we use in regression, parts therapy, the uncovering procedures, it all applies to, well, it all came out of dream working for me. That's what helped me to make sense of the process. So that's kind of down the road a little bit for me, but I'd really love to create that.
Even if any of the books you write are half as good as a Devil's Therapy, they're going to be wonderful,
Oh,
magnificent
thank you.
masterpieces. So
Well, I hope they don't each take 10 years to write.
that would be good. Exactly.
Would be very good.
Now, if people wanted to explore a little bit more about regression, because I do know that a lot of people, obviously via the nature of this podcast, are people who are just discovering hypnosis and hypnotherapy. Some people watching this are either training at the moment or about to graduate. If they wanted to start learning regression, what would be the best way for them to be able to achieve that?
You know, it really would depend on where they're at.
Mm.
It's like I believe in qualifying your clients. Find out where they're at before you decide what therapy you should be throwing at them.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for hypnotherapists as well. That some like I have people coming into. I have an online course called Ready for Regression. I have NLP practitioners coming in and going, "Oh wow, this was so useful for me." And I had no clue because I'm not an NLP practitioner. It's not something that ever rang my bells, So I don't really know. I would really have to get a sense of how that individual, where they were at. I don't have anybody that I recommend.
Mhm.
All I can tell you is that Gerald Klein's training was the foundation for me. And so I guess if I had to kind of offer a blanket statement, I would say, yes, start there. But don't
Wonderful.
stop there. Keep going.
No, well, this is. I always tend to paraphrase Milton Erickson in a few of these podcasts where he talks about, towards the end of his life and reflecting on his career, he made a comment along the lines of, "I've been doing this 50 years and I'm just beginning to get the hang of it." And it's those kind of words from a man like Milton Erickson that reminds me in my very short time doing this, that we've got to be a little bit kind to ourselves and not beat ourselves up for not knowing all the answers straight away, and that this is an ongoing journey of learning that
Yeah.
doesn't just stop with your graduation.
Right, you're reminding me of there used to be this poster out in the 80s, and it was a chimpanzee kind of hanging from a branch, and it said, just when I thought I had all the answers, they went and changed the questions.
Well, that's true. How often do clients come and present and you can run through a protocol or process in a textbook fashion? Inevitably you're going to have those clients that come along that just seem to have a twist or a turn that you weren't expecting. And that's where you need to bring in that creativity and that wisdom and knowledge that you have in order to be able to help move it forward to an outcome for them. I hate it when I have questions that form my head and then they disappear on me for some reason. There was one that I was leading
I
to.
will add something here, and that is beware of the lure of the shiny new toys.
Yes, I agree. I think I'm going to put up my hand now and say that I was a self-confessed course junkie for quite a while there. And it's only been probably the last year where I've stepped back and gone, why was I doing that? I think there was there might have been the allure of learning all of these things, but what's the point of learning all these things if you're not really immersing in it and mastering it. And
right, there's only, you only need a handful of tools, but you
mm,
need to master them.
mm,
Just master them. I mean, a heart surgeon only has a handful of tools, but he's mastered them.
yes,
It's the same idea. You're working with the subconscious mind. You don't need a whole bunch of tools, but by the same token, a single protocol probably isn't going to get you very far.
exactly. And you know what I really believe it is. And to be honest with you, quite often when you dig beneath the surface, a lot of the things that are coming up that are new and shiny are generally rebadged things that have happened in the past. So I think it's good about going bigger picture and learning particular skills such as regression or paths or those kind of timeless things that seem to become the ingredients or the building blocks for a lot of those other protocols out there. Again, I was
Sure,
leading
and
to a point, and I
we
think,
start out with suggestion. That's the basis of everything that we do. Suggestion. Master that. Master auto-suggestion.
mm, oh,
You know, uncovering and resourcing tools are very, very important because the answers are inside the client. So once you've gotten a handle on this, on delivering suggestions, now stop telling the subconscious mind what to do and start asking it what, you know, what those answers are, what,
mm,
where there's a block, where there's a problem, and transforming that. That's sort of the next level.
mm,
Regression gives you an opportunity to look and see how that was formed. If you do parts therapy, child parts are feeling parts.
mm,
Feeling parts are formed early in childhood.
mhm.
By the time you're what, 5 years old, 3 years old, you've experienced every possible emotion there is. That stuff's back there in childhood. So if you're dealing with an emotion, you're dealing with a child part.
Mhm.
So even, you know, that, and parts is considered a foundation for regression because we work with an inner child, we work with the adult consciousness of the client, and we work with offenders or parent parts, the people that hurt the client. And those are sort of the key elements that are involved in parts work. So we don't have to get all crazy about, you know, naming, oh, there's the inner critic and there's the judge and there's the teacher and we don't have to come up with all those names. We just keep it down to those three parts. It's very
Yeah.
simple.
I think also one of the things that I encourage people when I talk to them is that when you learn a technique, there is or when you're learning from someone, you mentioned this before yourself, there's the potential that you pretty much adopt their approach, even down to the way they speak, the language they use. I know very early on I was listening to Uncommon Knowledge work, and for a while there, I'm pretty sure I was Mark Tyrrell. And I think it's about that process of bringing who you are authentically into your work as well. And I think that's part of this process of becoming confident in a sense.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that's what confidence is.
Mm,
It's when you have mastered a tool or a technique, you have integrated it.
mm,
And you don't, now it's a part of your, you know, your repertoire, and you can facilitate that
yeah.
confidently. Know how it, basically you just know how it works.
Anthony Jackman recently said, and I love this, he said, you know what, instead of going and learning all these different techniques, it's often better to learn one to the point where you can use it creatively. And I thought that was a really beautiful little nuance there, the whole idea that, and it comes back to what we were talking about before about the client who throws a curveball and that's not how the process is supposed to go. You're supposed to fit my process. But instead, having that ability and that confidence to be able to take what
Yes.
you know, and in that moment go, oh, you're going that way. I'm going to need to lean in that way with you, and I'm going to take this with it.
Yeah.
And I
Well, you
think
know,
that's a skill.
Stephen Parkhill, I did a live training with him. I also had a live course with him, or a session with him. Blew my socks off. But something that he recommended was, he said, get really, really good at direct suggestion. Get to the point where you can turn onions into apples. That if you can convince a client that they're biting into an apple when you give them an onion, you can do anything. with hypnosis.
We have a thing in Australia called the pub test. I don't know if that exists in your part of the world, but it's about testing the truth or the validity of something. And it's, does it pass the pub test? If it was discussed about in the pub, would people buy into it? And hearing you say that line there, even my own stomach went, "Oh, that's a challenge."
Oh, that's scary. Yeah.
It's scary. Yeah.
Something else, he said, he used to go down to the pub and he would put, what did he say? I think he said he would put $100 bill on the bar, and he would challenge the person that if they could pick up that $100 bill, they could have it.
Hmm.
And he says, I got really good at direct suggestion really fast because it cost me money.
I think the interesting thing with direct suggestion is that there has to be, it's easy to say there has to be confidence behind it, but confidence is actually the outcome of other things that are going on beyond it. Mm. And for me, it's about, how strong is your intention that you bring into that moment? Because to me, that is really, I think, what it is that unwavering belief that you're going to go up to that person and have them believe that they are eating that apple or that they can't pick up that note. And that has to start from within yourself. And I think that's the hurdle, I think, a lot of the therapist face.
That may also operate on an energetic level.
Mm.
Yeah, we all have a spidey sense, right? Where the hair stands up on the back of your neck and something's not right. And clients pick up on our energy as well. This is something that I'm not sure if I mentioned it in the book or not, but it's like if you don't feel confidence in your session, mm-hmm. your clients are going to feel that about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially if they're in hypnosis, because a person in hypnosis is hyper receptive. They're hyper aware. And so if you're not really, confident and committed to what you're doing, they're going to pick up on that, and they won't
absolutely right
as much as you need them to.
Yep.
So it's really it's tough when you're just starting out because you don't have the confidence, you don't have any experience.
It's the proverbial chicken and egg situation, isn't it? And I keep talking about the Jackmans today for some reason, but Freddie Jackman would say something like, if you have any doubts, you have to learn to push those doubts out of the way. And going back to my podcast with him, I had to ask, well, how do you do that? Because it's easy to say that, but saying you need to push your doubts out of the way and go, okay, go doubts, versus authentically pushing doubts out of the way are two very different things. And, I think it really comes from an internal understanding that has to be built at a very subjective individual level that helps to do that. And I'm not quite sure the answer is yet in terms of how to help people to come to that own understanding about what it is that helps them in that moment to say, well, I can help this person. I do know that I believe it is an individual affirmation of some sort.
Well, I think you need to identify if you're feeling a lack of confidence or you're doubting your abilities. You talked about the imposter syndrome. I think you really need to identify whether that's coming from a place of, I'm not really comfortable with my tools. I don't have any experience with them. It's the third time I've ever driven mom's car and I don't really know how to clutch and brake and use the gas at the same time. I'm thinking about when I learned to drive, I learned on a 5-ton bread truck that required double shifting just to get it into gear. So, there's some anxiety there, and you just have to accept the fact that there is a learning curve. Yeah. And so that there's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely part of the process, and you're just going to have to deal with it. On the other hand, if that doubt and insecurity is coming from a past experience in your life, then that's something that's getting piled on top of what you're experiencing right now. And in that case, that's where releasing tools can be really helpful.
Mm.
That, like, I love tapping. Tapping is something that anybody can do. And you can get a little regression out of just tapping, just thinking about, oh, I feel really nervous. I feel nervous because, and let this stuff come to the surface and just tap on it. So instead of pushing it aside, you just bring it up, put it on the table and go, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
And you can release it and then it's over.
I think also for many people, there's that thought that you master something and then your confidence will stay at that level forever. But of course, we subject ourselves to new learnings all the time. A fortnight ago, I decided to do a stage hypnosis weekend. And that was fascinating. It was a wonderful Australian hypnotherapist, Rowan Gazzard. And the wonderful thing about the training he did was that it was largely practice. So what he would do is get chairs and put them all in a row, and then we'd all sit in the chairs, and he would demonstrate, and he'd be like, okay, half of you get up and you practice on the other half, and you cycle through, so you're all working with each other.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
And, I felt that insecurity come up at times as well. And I also felt that some people I walked up to, and you talked about energy before, energetically there was a connection, and straight away, bang, I could do rapid induction with them. But then other people I went up to, and there was perhaps my own nerves about me getting my head thinking, oh, they're a much better hypnotherapist than me. Please don't stuff this up. And again, it came back to that intention, because my intention wasn't focused on that. It was focused on not stuffing up. Very different again. But it was fascinating to go through that. And I'm pleased I did, because while I stepped outside my comfort zone, it was part of that learning process that's needed. Because the reality is, when you're starting to learn hypnotherapy, you are going to have clients that don't go into hypnotherapy, and you will question it. And those experiences will make you doubt if you're good enough to be a hypnotherapist.
Precisely. Didn't you notice when you did the boot camp that every client, each person that you were working with, every client is different?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can feel it we're talking about energy before. You feel about it when you walk up. There's either that energy there, or it's, what's that? Sorry?
They don't teach you this in hypnosis school.
No.
Two clients are alike. Like, you can have 15 clients that come in with the same issue. It's not the same issue.
Yeah. And that's
so you're not going to feel as confident with every one of those clients, because it's not the same issue. They're not the same individual. They have a completely unique history. Their problem is coming from a completely different place. It's expressing differently. And if you just say, oh, we're going to technique you, you're going to have, and then you'll come along and say, well, I've got about an 80% success rate.
Maybe that's why, maybe that's why niching is such a good idea as well, because at least then you have the confidence around the topic that you're doing a niche in, and can build confidence from there. Because we all know, as I think you've mentioned as well in the book, the reason they come to see you is not really the reason they come to see you. They might come to see you because of smoking or insomnia or anxiety or some form of dysfunction, but it's not really the reason.
Well, the symptom is not the problem.
Yeah.
The client comes to you, their reason is very clear. They are very uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable enough to try something as wackadoodle as hypnosis.
The woo-woo, yes.
Right? They're crazy enough to try that. That's how uncomfortable they are. But the symptom is not the problem. It's what's driving the symptom, what's generating the symptom that's the problem. And you don't really know what that is. So, so this is the difference between a technique-centered approach and a client-centered approach. A client-centered approach means that you need that therapeutic alliance.
Yeah.
You need to spend time to get to know that individual and learn something about them and find out how these symptoms are expressing. When did they first begin? What else is going on? What's been going on in your life? All of these things are related to the problem, because the thing that's at the center of the problem is the client.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wendie, I need to thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a wonderful chat. If people wish to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can do that?
You can get in touch with me through my website at tribeofhealers.com. There's a contact form there. You can email me. I am on Facebook. I have a page there, Tribe of Healers. And if you are trained in regression hypnotherapy, I have a regression hypnotherapy group, which is a safe place to talk about all things regression.
You've created a safe place. Lovely. Wendie, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute treat. For everyone watching, I'm sure you've picked up one or two wonderful gems out of this, and I look forward to seeing everyone next time. Until then, take care.